Welcome to Night City, the definitive channel for all your Cyberpunk 2020 needs. Now we're diving into the adventure products as the books left to talk about are starting to dwindle. And first up is the adventure anthology, Tales from the Forlorn Hope. Get ready for 8 related adventures that originate from the veteran bar of the same name, with several of the most memorable NPCs from the 2020 universe. This book turned out to be far better than I remembered. I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to go once more into the breach. Forlorn Hope came out in 1992 and was authored by William Moss. This is a bit unusual as anthologies are usually group efforts, but having one author does allow for consistency between the characters, which is the strong point of the module. Cover artist Doug Anderson, Daryl Midget, and Chris Hockabout lead the interior artists. The book is larger than most at 104 pages, but not by much. It's $12 on the Artel website, and you're not going to find any padding in this book. It's all game content all the way to the last page, no advertisements. The Forlorn Hope itself is a bar on the edge of Night City's combat zone, where most of the regulars were part of Long Recon Team 601, or the LRT 601, with the bar run by John the Professor Freeman. The book goes into a good amount of details, introducing you to every relevant NPC that's going to be featured in a later adventure, both bar staff and bar patrons, so the party is going to have some attachment to each of the NPCs. Unlike other games where you don't meet the NPCs until the actual adventure, these characters are set up to become friends with the players so the adventures have more impact later on. The first mission is set up by Kronos, a resident fixer at the bar. This is an introductory mission with focuses on stealth. Going in guns blazing will get you a TPK. The adventure is there to show that some missions the bad guys are going to have bigger guns, so other means are necessary. If your party is already overgunned, they might have an easy time with this mission, but you have to remind them that it's a covert op. No one's supposed to know that they were there until the explosives go off. It's a standard sneak in and steal stuff mission, with the added difficulties they have to do it twice because of the nature of the adventure. Hard Road is a road trip mission, as the name suggests, sponsored and led by Marlowe, a veteran of the LRT 601 and an open Militech operative. As far as corps go, she's actually one of the good ones. You have to escort a truck full of Militech weapons cross-country and make sure it gets there intact. As many of these adventures seem to share the same plot as classic movies, this is equal parts Mad Max Road Combat and the high tension of Wages of Fear. You even get to face a Panzer, a light hover tank, for a boss. The addition of the Panzer is a nice touch because that was a major part of the early cyberpunk genre in Hardwired, but it didn't get a lot of love in 2020. When you're not leaning out of a window shooting at a hover tank, you're using all the empathy skills you've got because there's a surprisingly lot of interaction in this adventure. Third up is the Impalers, where you have to go help the Euro Solo Wolf find his missing brother back in Romania. This is a horror adventure all the way, getting heavy shades of Dog Soldiers, with a good chunk of investigation and some pretty serious combat. The adventure requires you to strip the party of a good chunk of their guns and gears. The bad guys sound tough on paper, but their weapons have a hard time getting through some of the most basic body armor, and even heavy handguns can put them down easily. Cyberpunk tried to introduce supernatural elements through licensed product with limited success, and this adventure personifies that. A giant hairy guy with claws might scare some mundanes, but when the Solo just switches to armor-piercing incendiary, it does lose a lot of its menace. Next up is Girls' Night Out, featuring Kissy and Roxy. These are the dirty pair. I don't even like anime, but I immediately recognized these two. They are unapologetically stolen from the cartoon and just inserted into this adventure. The adventure, despite the trigger-happy nature of your partners, is lighthearted in tone and largely bloodless. This isn't from a lack of trying from the pair, as their favorite method of dealing with things involves large explosions. But when the mission immediately goes sideways, you have to undo the screw-up without getting anybody killed, and get out before anybody realizes that the entire chain of events was because somebody didn't check their intel before running the mission. Next up, the party heads to South America with the Russian AV pilot Zora to deal with an upstart biochem company in the middle of a jungle. It's a standard sneak in and blow up stuff mission with Zora in the background because she's just your pilot out of the jungle for this adventure. Of course, the mission goes full on Chuck Norris because it steals the plot from Missing in Action, and you get to shoot your way through a whole bunch of Colombians to rescue POWs. My players recognize the plot almost instantly. They didn't even try to disguise it a little bit. Fall of the Axemen is unusual in that the NPC associated with this adventure is clinging to the life the entire time and you have to solve the case for him. That's one of the reasons why you need to introduce the NPCs in previous adventures to give gravity to the adventure so it's just not some random unconscious guy that they have no connection to that they are trying to save. This one is standard investigation, and it's very similar to a lot of 1950s crime noir. It's also the first one to have something for a netrunner to do in the adventure, as all the previous ones have largely been in the field away from computer systems. Fall of the Axemen does let the players cut loose with some extreme violence on some very nasty bad guys, and then they get to figure out the best way to deal with the villain as they've got multiple options to put this adventure in the win column. Next up is Tough as Nails, dealing with the young and inexperienced federal marshal who has to escort a witness who is targeted for death by the mob. Pretty much every adventure in this book seems to have the plot taken from a movie or anime. I'm sure the ones that I don't recognize the plot to is taken from somewhere else that somebody else might know. For example, this one, if any of your players are Clint Eastwood fans, they're going to recognize the plot of The Gauntlet the minute this party has to get into a school bus with the witness and drive him to safety with all the bad guys literally gunning for him. Like the Missing in Action adventure, this one makes no attempt to disguise the plot. You're driving from point A to point B with a lot of people shooting at you. The last adventure is The Last Long Rider, and this one can be anything from a tearjerker to a time for the party to shine. One of the missing soldiers from the LRT 601 shows up in a sorry state, and he's pushing cyberpsychosis when the party is sent to bring him back so he can get proper treatment. This one has a heavy focus on PTSD, as the party has to treat Rico with kid glove because there's rogue cops and solos hot on his trail. He does have blood on his hands, but he's also been pushed to the edge, so it's kind of like the plot to First Blood. Even if the party does everything right, there's still a chance he's going to go over the edge and have to be put down. Of course, if you're my party, they just sedate him to calm him down. Then when he does go to sleep, the techie removes all of his cyber limbs, so when he finally loses it, he's just a torso. But then again, my players come up with some messed up off-the-wall solutions more often than not. Forlorn Hope is a good read. It's got likable and relatable NPCs for the party to get to know, and the adventures give a lot of opportunities for each party member, though the netrunner is going to be bored with the lack of hackable items on a good chunk of these. They stole the plot for most of these adventures from various movies and at least one anime, but if you're going to steal your inspirations from popular action movies and such, steal from the good ones. Knowing the plot of some of these adventures is going to give some of the parties an advantage, but other adventures not so much. It's best if you use these adventures for filler. They aren't very long, and playing them back to back keeps the party from getting to know the NPCs. The Forlorn Hope is meant to be a hub. Get to know the NPCs before adventuring with them, and you make the adventures better. Next up is Home of the Brave, the only Cyberpunk 2020 box set, and a cross-country adventure that can be quite railroady at times. You're going to have to think fast to keep the players from going a different route than the module demands, which is quite a lot.